Have rather a stellar man about town here. Anthony Durkacz is a director of FSD Pharma, one of our favorite companies on the CSE, trading under the symbol HUGE, H-U-G-E. And he's got another company coming soon where the symbol's going to be PUMP. So, master of the understated symbol, Anthony Durkacz. How are you, Anthony?
All right.
A fellow Pole.
I am. Polish last name, you're right.
So you guys are Polacks here.
Yeah, Polski Ogórki.
Polski Ogórkis times 2. Whoa! This is a special day. Anyways, Anthony, I want to ask you before we get any further down that
Before
path,
I say anything.
can we ask you, how did you come up with the idea of launching a company with such a huge freaking capitalist structure for a startup that was like, the whole thing sounded crazier and it just got crazier and crazier, and then boom, suddenly it was just like, it just made so much sense that everybody who was bad-mouthing it is suddenly pretending to be your friend again.
Yeah, so I think, you know, sort of being around the penny stock world for a few years, and you know, always trying to sort of create value in the world of penny stocks, which is sometimes a hard thing to do. You know, the cannabis industry and sector, you know, created something in Canada I don't think that anyone had seen before. I mean, far bigger than your best junior mining booms or oil and gas booms or banking booms. And so, you know, I think it was probably the right time. And I think the idea was, you know, is there sort of a stock that could have been created that, you know, that would have a following that no one had ever seen before. And so, you know, I studied some of the Australian deals and mining deals and how they had these, you know, very large floats. And so when we were beginning construction of the financing of HUGE, you know, that was sort of came to mind. It's like, why, if they can do it in Australia, can we not do it in Canada?
Yeah, because they have companies with monster
Giant
shares.
floats.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, interesting.
And so it was like, well, so why does it work in Australia and why hadn't it worked in Canada? I think in Canada I was told by different brokers that there were 3 companies before HUGE that came out with over 1 billion shares in the float, and unfortunately all 3 were related to mining or oil, and they all went to you know, half-cent bids or zero
no
bids.
Yeah, offered.
And that was even the CSE Exchange had asked us and sort of reiterated that when we tried to take HUGE public.
Right.
You know, whoa, shouldn't you do a rollback? And the answer was no. But there were other reasons. I mean, we had 4,700 shareholders on day 1 of trading with HUGE, and you know, First Republic had to deny almost 1,000 people that weren't accredited to do the financing. So I think that built up a
So
demand.
how many different participants did you have in that?
It was just over 4,700 shareholders on day 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's like incredible.
Yeah, and well, I had a good question, but
there it goes.
the question just disappeared into the abyss.
This was like traded more shares on most days than any other stock has ever traded on the CSE.
Not only the CSE, also the TSXV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so like this is, people are looking at this and going, where is the demand coming from? Who's buying this stuff?
Well, and I think even when you look at volumes, there's also other stories to the whole game of volume. So you either have your CSE or TSXV or TSX proper, and then you have a number of different other exchanges that also trade the stock, right? So outside of whatever Alpha, Neo, Chi-X,
there's all kinds there.
There's a number of different
6 or 8 probably.
More, yeah.
Is there more?
Yeah, there's more than 8. So, you know, the true volume numbers are never seen when you look at your TSXV or CSE top trading stock.
Yeah,
it's
I have that feature on my stock watch, so I do look at.
So stock watch catches every other exchange except for this exchange called Matchmaker.
Okay.
And that's what we learned through HUGE. So the one website that actually will let you know the total traded shares in the day, but it's delayed until 420 is the tmxmoney.com site. If you go to huge.cc, that actually gives you the total traded, and that total traded will be different than what you see on Stockwatch. It'll be higher every single time, every single day.
Not right, eh?
Yeah.
So now tell me, what is the long-term sort of business model for Huge?
Huge. So we will be focused in pharma, in medical, and the reason being is because I think number one, Thomas, who was the original founder of Huge, he used marijuana for the first time, to cure his foot pain because of type 2 diabetes, and then he saw the light after being offered a cookie and finally trying it after 60 plus years, and for him that was sort of the vision. For us, it's the vision not only because it's the right thing to do, I think, from a human perspective, but also it's where the margins are going to be. And I think going forward, a lot of people will say, well, is the market overvalued? Are we in a bubble? Those types of natural questions that everyone should be asking in this market. And the answer is yes, we are in a bubble. Does anyone ever know when the bubble's going to burst? The answer is no. I'm on record with CNBC saying that, I thought the bubble was going to burst in the internet in 1998, and guess what? If you weren't investing in those other 3 years, they actually, and more money was made in that end of the bubble.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. So none of us can predict what happens. I think though, what's really important, what we want to drive in our company is, Canada is a very small country, and it's just financially it's very small. Where is the growth going to happen in the cannabis industry going forward is going to be international, and more so in the investment community, it's also going to be international. So if you're going into the U.S., onto NASDAQ, onto the NYSE, if you're going into London, or if you're going into Hong Kong, those are going to open bigger doors. However, with everything still being federally illegal in every other country outside of Uruguay and Canada, the challenge, or the opportunity, I think actually I should restate that, the opportunity is going to be in accessing some of that capital. And personally, I think in America, they will legalize medicinal use, and it will happen during the Trump era. And for one reason, votes.
Right. How long do you think the Trump era is going to last, though?
So we'll see in the midterm elections how things go.
Probably another 6 years.
Yeah, who knows?
Another 6 years, great.
No, I'm
There's something to celebrate.
Well,
Jesus
there's a lot of people that like him.
Really?
And there are, and as much as everyone says, and I don't want to get into politics, but Trump's been a very astute businessman, and it's going to carry into politics, and so he's going to go where his votes are going to go. And so it depends on how if these midterm elections end up being very negative for the Republican Party, for his bid to become president again in the federal elections, he's going to have to go after some new bases. The cannabis base is pretty big, considering that 31 states have already legalized medicinally. Why federally, if you make that change, is that really going to upset your base? I mean, it might upset some fundamentalist groups, but are those fundamentalist groups bigger than the cannabis using and then cannabis medicinal using groups? And the answer probably today is no, by virtue of their own democracy.
Yeah, somebody sent me something the other day saying that he's likely to endorse federal.
All right, enough about Trump, though. Tell me about Pump, your next deal. Let's get way too fired down. And
I'm just saying.
And you're right. And in fact, I don't like to talk about that.
I was too busy buying Huge on the spot.
It's kind of interesting that we don't want to. It's not political, but I think if they legalize it federally, medicinally in America, if you're positioned properly on the NASDAQ or the NYSE, you will going to get bigger bumps than we would ever see in Canada, right?
Yeah.
So, and we'll have access to a lot more money, and I think what it will stimulate probably is a marijuana biotech rush, that we have maybe never seen before, or could be bigger than the internet was in the late 90s, and so that's, I think, where we want to pivot Huge.
Sure. Yeah. So Huge, by the looks of it, I've noticed the way that you've been doing these transactions, and so you've got this deal coming with international. Can we talk about the international?
World-class extractions.
World-class extractions, rather. You've got CanTab, who are now occupying different sides of what looks like a cannabis development campus.
It's like cannabis wonderland.
Cannabis wonderland, where we're going to love to go and play, Ed. play.
Go on the rides.
Yeah, we get. Is there a one pass for one price? You get everything kind of thing.
Good question. Haven't thought that far ahead.
So tell me, what's the plan for international extracts?
World-class extractions.
World-class extract.
Yeah. So the way that World Class was formed was a strange story. At that point, actually, I was still selling our very first public round of Huge, and we had about 40 people come on site to give a tour, potential investors, and a few of them brought edibles that they had either made or they knew people that had made them. And so, you're looking at these things, you're looking at these, really nicely packaged brownies and cookies and different types of edibles. And really it dawned on me, hey, we are the former craft plant. This was a place where they made large scale edibles, so it's probably the right fit. However, to make these edibles, you have to use extraction of some form, whether you're going to produce it into a powder, a pulp, an oil, etc. So on the way back, on the drive back to Toronto from the craft plant, on my mind I was thinking, extractions, but where are we going to extract from? And right at that moment in time, I got a text that was not meant for me. Mm-hmm. It was meant for someone's girlfriend who I had not spoken to in the guy I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. But he was sending a message to his girlfriend, not to me, a text. And so I kind of found it amusing and thought, wow, how's it going? I hadn't talked to him in 3 years. I had invested in him about 6 years ago in 3 different stages. And he was working on extraction technology in the petroleum industry. Mm-hmm. And so, he picks up the phone because I said this, your text, I don't think it was meant for me. Maybe it was, but if it was, how's it going? Calls me up, he said, I'm still working hard for your money. And he said, I want to thank you because you're the only investor that I have that has never bothered me. He's like, you haven't called me in 3 years. And so I said, hey, I knew what I was getting involved in from an investment perspective. These are high risk deals. And so why am I going to waste anyone's energy, trying to bother you as a shareholder?
Right.
And so, I want to thank you. And then it dawned on me that I was thinking about extraction, and this is an extraction play. And just for whatever reason, it happened right at that moment in time. And I said, you know what? I'm just leaving.
A eureka moment.
Exactly. I was leaving the crap plant, and I'm like, hold on. You know what? This extraction technology that you've been trying to infiltrate, the petroleum industry with, can we use it for cannabis? And his answer was, you can use it for any organic material. However, I don't know how well it will perform, and I've never used or worked with cannabis ever in the past, so I don't know. He was like, but because you were such a nice shareholder and you never, busted my balls, was his quote. He's like, I'd be happy to test it for you at cost. We'll set up a makeshift lab, do some beakers. Did it in California on January 2nd, and that's how World Class Extractions was formed.
Huh. So that's great. All right, well, that's awesome, Anthony. Let's leave it there for now. We'll come back to you in due course, probably with the launch of Pump, of which I'm going to be a shareholder. Full disclosure, I'm a shareholder in Huge. And thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you guys for the opportunity.
Great, Anthony.
Now we're going to swap on